Hey everyone, this is Christopher. This week we decided to do something just a little different. Instead of releasing a regularly scheduled main pod episode, we decided to release a bonus episode from the Lot1 Podcast After Show. These episodes are awesome. Essentially, they are a bonus episode to the main episode. The after show is about 20 to 45 minutes, depends on the guest, and they're a little bit more laid back. We get to know the people a little bit better. It's, hair down, get a glass of whiskey, and just hang out. And also, sometimes me and Deji have extra questions that we had in the main pod that we didn't have time to get to. So we focus on them in the after show. From all of us here at the Lot1 Podcast, thank you for your support. Enjoy this amazing bonus episode from the Lot1 Podcast After Show. Thank you.
Hey, and welcome to the Lot1 Podcast After Show. I'm Deji Boncole.
And I'm Christopher.
Today we're going to continue our conversation with Nick Curcio. Today we're going to get into basically what we're talking about in the original pod, which is
TikTok controversies.
Yes. TikTok
state of the industry, and more importantly, which we didn't expect,
also IPs pitching
that you
IPs
would not expect. Not at all.
Try to think of it before, as you're listening to this, and try to guess what the IPs are. You're never gonna get them. Anyways, let's get into the show. Hey everybody, welcome to the after show. Thank you so much for being here. And big thanks to Nick, who we just recorded a podcast with you. And I want to, break it down. How did we do? Were we good hosts? Were we bad hosts? Give us the tea. Let us know. We want some notes. You asked about notes before. We want the notes now.
No, I thought you guys did great. I'm just really happy to be invited to the after party. It's like currently like midnight right now, and we're just
we're letting the drinks fly.
Yeah, the daylight in your glasses say otherwise, but
the daylight, and we're all drinking some sort of tea,
coffee
or thing,
tea, caffeinated drink.
That's great. I'm glad you enjoyed it. This is going to be a little bit different. I mean, we're going to be talking still about all the things that we were talking about before. The last question-y. I will try not to interrupt you as much as possible. But I do want to talk a little bit about sort of what we were talking about before about, the industry right now, but more about, if you're a new person and you're trying to get into the industry now, like how is this not the right time to get into the industry? Is it like, should you hold off on your dreams for a couple of years until our shit's figured out? Or is this the time to get in because it's a fucking mess and we want to, and we need people to come clean it up?
Really hard question. Love it. No, I think, look, I want to answer this with the caveat of again, trying not to sound like gatekeepery, because all the advice that I usually post online is I'm trying to be helpful and undo what some of the gatekeepers say. That being said, it depends specifically what you're trying to do right now. I think that if you're going to drop everything to try to move to LA right now to like make it in the industry, maybe don't do that. But if you have a script that you think is really great and you're going to submit it to Austin Film Festival or Nickel or like Screencraft or like a really revered screenwriting competition, and you have a little money to spend on that, not a bad time to do that, because guess what? Even during times when the industry is like dead, people are always wanting to discover the next new thing, right? So like if you win one of these competitions or you do really, really well, I don't think that no one's going to reach out to you just because it's pretty quiet right now, because the reality is once somebody reaches out and poaches you, you're going to work on stuff and you're maybe going to have a script to send out 6 months from now. So Yeah, it depends on what exactly you're trying to do, but it definitely is a weird time. And I think same goes with like maybe if you're trying to like reach out on your own to agents or sorry to managers because you don't really reach out to
Yeah.
agents. Um, Probably yeah, kind of a tough time because managers are already sort of struggling to figure out what to do with their own clients who are out of work. Um, but yeah, it doesn't cost anything to like keep working on your stuff, to keep writing and rewriting the scripts that you have. And yeah.
I think a lot of people forget about this industry runs on a very long time frame. So
Yeah.
something being written now may be the big thing that's being produced 2 years from now, or
Hmm.
Yeah.
released 2 years from now. So
Yeah. Or in the case of Ricky Stenicki, it'll be released 14 years later, which that
yeah.
script was sent out and purchased like 14 years before
Yeah.
the
That's
movie just came
crazy.
out. Yeah.
Wow. Does that happen a lot though? Like buying a movie, and then
For scripts
why? What's the point about that?
That one specifically is so interesting because I guess more often than not, it probably doesn't happen. You just don't hear about those projects; they just die. But there's something about Ricky Stenicki. I remember when I was an assistant for my boss, unprompted. I didn't bring up Ricky Stenicki. I didn't know what that was. He just felt the need to tell me one day. He's like, "Hey, there used to be this script called Ricky Stenicki that everybody loved like 10 years ago, and." It was about these guys who are always blaming the bad things they do on their imaginary friend named Ricky Stenicki. So like something about that script just like infatuated everybody in the industry for some reason. And it's a fun script. It's a fun idea. And yeah, like if you Google Ricky Stenicki, there are articles from 10 years ago with like, this person's going to star in it. This person's going to star in it. But yeah, I mean, most announcements, if you go on Deadline right now, like most of the announcements you see, those movies are never going to come out because most projects never get made because there's a million different reasons why they can fall apart.
I kind of want to talk a bit about the A24 controversy, like the Lancer saga that
Yeah.
you sort of
Debunked.
yeah
I was
you,
entangled in. Yeah.
yeah, you were intertwined in a scandal.
Mhm.
No, not a scandal, but can you mind kind of giving us your rundown on
Yeah.
it?
Yeah. So basically, I usually try to be really positive on TikTok. Sometimes I'll make videos defending other people who were attacked. If I talk about movies, I'm usually positive. If I talk about writing, I'm usually positive.
Mhm.
So I get sent this video by a friend of mine, and I had seen these videos in my feed of this girl. Her name is Mary Kate Teskey, and she is a sort of filmmaker who wears a cowboy hat and she's got the boots, and she's a singer songwriter, and she does the movies and she does photography and all this stuff. And she had this like series of videos talking about how she got this A24 film greenlit. And I had seen the videos and I was sort of like, I don't know, this doesn't really look legit to me. And then one of my friends sent me the video again and she's like, do you think this is legit? Like, and it kind of just caused me to do a deep dive on her page. And like, because I searched all around TikTok and no one had
Yeah.
said anything about these videos. There was one guy who stitched her and was like, this has to be a
Mm.
bit, right? And then she blocked him immediately. But no one had done like a full deep dive. And I was also like, I have friends. Like it wasn't hard for me to hit up a few people and say, can you ask this person to ask this person to, reach out to A24 and see if this is
Yeah.
real. And so I did that, and it became clear to me through that and just my own research that this wasn't real. And so
Yeah.
I sort of went back and forth on like whether or not I should make a video about this. But eventually I did, and I made a really long, like 7-minute long video or something, just
Yeah.
using screenshots from the whole saga. Like, here's the date where this happened. She told the story of her car, and it went viral on TikTok about how this car
Yeah.
was in her family, this old Dodge Lancer. And you can see the narrative go along, and she's like, oh, like Hallmark reached out to me and Hot Wheels, and they wanted to make a movie, but I think this should be an A24 movie. And eventually she said she got the deal with A24 to write and direct
Mhm.
this movie. And
Yeah.
so, like maybe there's a version where it's like, oh, let's just let this girl lie about it. But I was like, no, I'm going to say something because I've fact checked this, and like I wouldn't be making this debunking video if I wasn't 100% sure that this wasn't real. So I make this video, and immediately I can tell it's going to go viral. It gets 1 million views in 24 hours, and this whirlwind of events begins to play out. I start getting all these people DMing me who know this girl in real life in Montana where she lives.
Yeah.
And I'm getting people saying, I got someone who was like sort of extended family of hers, people that just know her that live there. And a lot of people were saying the same thing of like, oh, you seem really nice. And I knew that somebody would expose her someday because she's always lying about this kind of stuff. But I'm just happy that it was such a nice person who did this. And so it started to become clear that, oh, this was a person making the story up. There was allegedly the local and it was like allegedly the local DJs in town who were commenting on my video. They were like, oh my God, we did a story about this girl on the local radio about how she's rags to riches A24 success story. And now we have to do a new story about how she made it up. And it was like people who had interviewed her on podcasts were reaching out to me, DMing me. And so immediately, and there was like people, someone did eventually end up writing an article about it, and they interviewed me, they interviewed her for it. And so basically what happened is the first thing was she took down all the A24 videos and wasn't really saying anything about what happened. Yeah. And then she sort of was taunting the audience a little bit and was sort of like, haters, talk to my agents, like whatever. And then she finally came out and said, I am making a movie about my car. That's true, but it's not an A24 movie. And so I sort of felt a little justified because there were a lot of people in my comments like, maybe this is all marketing for her movie. Like you might be wrong. And I was like, trust me, I'm not wrong. So yeah, it became this really weird drama that I got enveloped in. And there were people sort of like, there were some reporters who were digging around. There was an article written about it. But it was so weird because there was so many people. There were a lot of people, like at the beginning of my video, I said, I don't want to draw people to this person's page to like attack them. But that didn't really happen because the moment anybody went to her page and said anything about it, even the people who were like, do you have proof that you were telling the truth? Like she would block everyone immediately. She must have blocked hundreds. Wow. She must have blocked thousands of people. Like it was pretty astounding. But she never blocked me. She actually followed me, which was really interesting. And eventually, when she, admitted that it was fake, I did DM her, and I said, "Hey, I think it was cool that you actually admitted the truth." And she told me that the whole thing was kind of meant to be satire, which is, I don't know, which doesn't exactly make sense to me. Yeah, because in the article, she goes on record to say like Hot Wheels and all these other companies that reached out to her on Hallmark, that was all real, but the A24 saga was satire, even though her page isn't really satire. But I don't know. It was a really weird case study in someone clearly trying to get clout on the internet. And, I did get comments from people like, why do you care about this? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't think there are that many other screenwriters on TikTok who have the resources to like fact check this and make a video to call somebody out. So I felt compelled to do it. But also, anybody has the right to lie on the internet, and anybody has the right to like call them out. But it spurred on this discussion in the comments from a lot of Gen Z people who were like, this is literally just been manifestation. Like all she was trying to do is manifest it. And so it becomes like, well, what's actually the difference between manifestation and just lying? Like she was like tagging A24 every day. Like, I don't know what she thought the game plan was really,
I mean, it's so interesting because like I didn't hear about this until afterwards, and I saw your videos and I was actually trying to do the investigating with you as so I'd pause your video and I'd go try to find the video that you're talking about. And then most of them were all gone because you deleted them all. And But even saying, that she went on to podcasts and she went on to like these are not things that you do when it's like a satire. You don't
Mhm.
you don't do those things for a joke, for a laugh, because especially like local radio stations where people are talking about rags to riches, like these types of things
Mhm.
are things that you're doing because you're trying to to be honest, it doesn't make that much sense to me because
Yeah.
like where are you going to go like at the end of it? Are you going to magically convince A24 to do a thing with you, and then but the likelihood of that is like pretty low. I don't know, it just it doesn't make that much sense to me.
You know what it sounds like to me? Because her video, one of her videos, I don't know which one, actually came across my For You page one time. And I like saw
Really?
it and I like swiped past it after like 5 seconds because I was like, that doesn't feel legit. Like, whoop. Like normally, like when I watch, because living in LA, I get a lot more like filmmaking type
Mhm.
things. And whenever it's like
Mhm.
someone who's actually working on a project, you can tell within the first 5 seconds because they're cutting to them on set or they're cutting to them in
Mhm.
somewhere working on something. And she never really did that. And then, a month later, now we're talking to you coming on this podcast and you were the one who debunked it. And I was like, wow, what a small circle
Yeah.
that created for me personally. Cause I had no idea. I never dug any deeper. I just swiped past it. But I think what happened, because and it feels very like when I was younger type of thing, like really young,
Mm.
when still living with my parents, where you say something to like your friend or you lie about it, right? You post it on social media, right? Social media is like the new generation's friend, right? You post it and
Mhm.
then it blows up a little bit, and now you're like, well, now I can't like come
Like you're
tell
too
the
far.
Mm.
truth. Yeah. And then so you do another
Yeah.
thing. And then now you're getting, news people talking to you and they're talking about how great, rags to riches. And it's like, she probably just got caught up in it too
Mhm.
much and then kept going. But then also on the flip side, it's like, that method kind of works. Maybe not the way she did it, but it's like, when you want to make a commercial for a brand, what do? You make a spec commercial and then you tag them. But
Mhm.
typically you would say, like, oh, this isn't an official commercial. It's a spec commercial. Like, I made this for them. I'm going to tag them on TikTok. I'm going to keep doing it until they respond and they pay me to do this work. Right.
Right.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
maybe it was just a weird, messed up way of trying to make it happen, and then it just blew up past what she wanted, and she just got caught in
Yeah.
it. And
Like
yeah,
maybe she's very,
Yeah.
very
And
smart.
yeah.
I.
Like
5 years from now, she's
she's like
gonna,
Well,
really,
yeah,
really
she's gonna make an A24 film.
yeah. I
not
mean,
th-
I
not
guess the
yeah, yeah.
tricky the tricky thing is, so yeah, in a way, she was trying to manifest it, but I think the thing is, A24 also distributes films. So
Yeah.
there was
Yeah.
a world where she did make that movie, have a finished product, have something to send out, and A24 could have maybe distributed it someday. I don't know that they would do that anymore because of this situation. But I think, I mean, look, the real reason that pushed me over the line and why I made it was because she did have like an active live
Yeah.
GoFundMe campaign. And
Oh no.
so ethically, I thought, even though she only raised a couple $100, like it was still up and live and all these videos. She only started posting these in like March, the A24 saga. So she had posted a
Yeah.
bunch of videos. And there was always an opportunity that one of those blows up and then she gets an influx of money. And so I don't know if I would have made it if she didn't have that money um, element. And that was another thing. She immediately shut down the fundraising campaign.
Mm.
But yeah, I mean, I totally see what you're saying, and it is an interesting case
Yeah.
study. But yeah, and then a lot of people were saying like, oh, now A24 needs to make a movie where it's like about me and her, or it's
About
like
her.
about a girl who's
Yeah.
Trying to
trying
make
to
a movie.
fake her way into making the
Yeah.
A24 movie.
And you're the bad
Um,
guy.
yeah. It's like, there's been a couple. There's like The Disaster Artist, that movie that came out a couple years
Yeah,
ago, which
right.
was
Yeah,
about
yeah.
sort of a
Yeah.
delusional filmmaker's dream. Which
Right.
that movie's really good.
Yeah.
But
The Room,
yeah,
you
I don't
mean?
know. Really, The Room, that was the original one. Yeah.
No, but that's
Um,
I was making a joke that was that was a really good one. The
oh,
Room.
yeah.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
good in a bad way, but
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. Definitely some of the weirdest TikTok drama that I've been involved in thus far. And it was like for
Yeah.
a couple days, you know, you get like a little nervous when you have something performing those types of numbers. And it was
Mm.
also weird because like all these like random like influencers who are well known on TikTok like would just like DM me and be like, they wouldn't even say like, hey, they would just be like, do you want to read my screenplay? And I would be
Okay.
like, what happened to hello? But I
That's
guess, you know,
funny.
everybody really does have like a screenplay in their, I guess we don't
That's
say trunk
interesting.
anymore, but they've got the email ready to go, you know?
Wow, that's funny.
I have two things I want to touch on before we move away from TikTok.
First is, can you read his screenplay?
Can you read my screenplay? Yes. Secondly, you in the main pod, or I'll touch on this one first. For you as a screenwriter, is TikTok and social media important? Like, why? Like, other than it being a creative outlet, and obviously, like, you know, film's slow right now. Like, why TikTok? Do you feel like you're just doing it for fun? Do you feel like it's a way to, in this new age, a way to become more popular? So maybe like you pick up the big film, or like, is there a reason? Is there not? You know, why TikTok?
It's a really interesting question. It's such a new idea, right? Like the
Mm.
concept of, because I think that this influencer thing has been around for a really long time, but what I haven't seen as much is, yeah, like could you use social media as like a secondary platform to talk about, like I'm just talking about what my actual job is, and then the
Mhm.
question is, could that help with my actual job? And I don't know. I don't know that necessarily. I mean, there are people who are getting book deals because of their TikTok followers. I just started writing books. I'm on my second book now, and I've
Nice.
done a lot of research. I've talked to a lot of authors, um, and I am hearing that publishers, um, like you can't just have a good book. They do want you to have like a following so that you have
Mm.
people you can try to plug your book to. But for movies, I don't know. I don't know that like the head of a studio necessarily cares how many followers you have. I think for me, it's more so when I write a script, I never get the dopamine hit of like people reading the script, like other than random producers in the industry who read it, but like no one is really going to see my product. Like maybe the movie gets made, but even then, no one that I know is going to like read my script. So I don't get
Yeah.
the dopamine hit of like releasing a product. And so I think with TikTok, I love how I can instantaneously put up a video where I get to talk about something that I'm passionate about, like writing. And then when a video goes viral, um, you know, it's cool that so many people are interested in that stuff. And it's like, you know, when I first started posting on TikTok, I was just talking about movies that I liked because I was like, well, that's what people do who are like movies. And then I was like, nobody wants to hear about screenwriting.
Mm.
And then I made some videos about screenwriting and like specifically like showing script pages and stuff, which I really thought people wouldn't care about. And then everybody was reaching out to me saying, you got to keep doing this. I love the script breakdowns. Like there's
Mm.
those YouTube videos that are like anatomy of the scene where the directors break
Yeah.
down, you know, the visuals. And somebody had told me like, you need to do that, but for screenplays, it's so interesting. And I just never thought that would be something interesting to people, because sometimes it can be boring and like scripts aren't something that an average person wants to read for fun.
Yeah.
Even the people who his job it is to make movies sometimes don't like reading scripts. So yeah, I don't know. It's been an interesting outlet for me and an opportunity to just talk about stuff that I'm passionate about.
Yeah.
And then yeah, maybe someday it does, you know, if the numbers get up there, then it gives me an opportunity to sort of translate that into some type of thing or clout that maybe gets me opportunities. But yeah, like the day that the Lancer video blew up, I did get random DMs from people who like have production companies and things like that. So I think in this day and age, like anything you can do to throw stuff out,
Yeah.
and see what happens is a good thing, you know?
It almost reminds me about what we talked about in the main pod, where you've got like, 8 to 10 things going at one time, one of
Yep.
which is, you doing the TikTok and all the social stuff that you're doing right now as being one of those things that's, you're like you're I'm trying to use not a animal term for this, but like you're fishing basically. You've got a lot of
Yeah.
like different fishing poles out with like different baits on it and stuff, and you're just trying to reel in different things, and one of which is this movie, you're doing a pitch over here, and then yeah.
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 Yeah. And like a few years ago, I would just be doing a bunch of projects that were all relating to screenwriting. So I would have, like you said, the pitch, the script, all that kind of stuff, the one pagers. And then nowadays, and part of that is because the industry has been slower. I'm not going out on as but pre strike, it did really start to get slow. But like there was a time where there was just constantly things coming in. Like, do you want to pitch on this board game? Do you want to pitch on this candy bar movie? Because there were just so many things that the studios were trying to make, and it's really, really, really whittled down right now. So I do have like extra time. But yeah,
Candy
like that
bar
part.
movie. That's interesting.
Oh man, I could go into some candy. I'm not going to say any names of candy bars, but
Yeah, sure.
I've pitched on some stuff that you wouldn't believe. But about the diversifying thing, nowadays it's really good for me to be able to hop from like the screenplay to the book. So like this month, I have the second book that I'm working on that I'm really, really excited about. The first book I ever wrote was like a pitch that we almost sold, and then I converted it into a book that we took out. And so now I have another book that's more of like a passion project. But so it's like, why not try to sell the book, and then we can turn the book into a movie or TV show? Why not post TikToks and see what happens, and see if we can get any opportunities, with that. And then also just constantly be sending scripts out. I think the more opportunities that you can throw out there, the more chance of you just hitting it lucky. And and it's also just good for your brain to not, I feel like when I'm just doing scripts all day, it can be sometimes just not fun. And it's like, it's really fun for me to write prose in a novel, because it's so different than screenwriting, and it's so much more freeing.
The Lot1 Podcast is brought to you by the Tourist Hat Coffee Company. You know what keeps me running on those long film sets, Stagey?
What's that, Chris?
Coffee. And you know what's the worst thing ever?
A swift kick in the pants.
No, bad coffee. So that's why I choose Tourist Hat Coffee Company's high quality coffee beans. Their artisan roasted single origin coffee and handcrafted blends are so much better than those stale stuff you get from those other brands.
Yeah, those things are bad.
Tourist Hat Coffee Company's coffee is artisan roasted, micro roasted, single origin, and their small batch roaster that handcrafts their blends to maximize peak freshness upon delivery. Family owned and operated. What more could you ask for from a coffee company, Deji?
I literally can't think of anything else.
If you're still not sold, a portion of each purchase goes towards contributing to some of their favorite nonprofit organizations, such as Animation Dance Community, Seeds of Hope International, and Beautiful Gate Orphanage.
These guys are good.
Make Tourist Hat Coffee Company your new go-to quality coffee choice with our exclusive offer for you, the Lot1 Podcast listener.
Oh, listen up, guys.
First-time customers can use the code LOT1BOGO at checkout to receive one free bag of coffee when you buy two. That's right, Deji, buy two, get one free.
Whoa.
So head on over to touristhatcoffeecompany.com and use promo code LOT1BOGO at checkout. Again, that is LOT1 BOGO at checkout. Whether you work in the film industry or not and want a delicious cup of coffee, this is the perfect time to stock up on your favorite blends of coffee or try something new. I know I'll be brewing Tourist Hat on my sets moving forward, Deji. Again, that's promo code LOT1 BOGO, LOT1 BOGO at checkout to claim your buy two, get one free. Terms and conditions apply. Tourist Hat, coffee that fuels your adventure.
So you talked a little bit about the candy bar thing, the candy bar pitch.
I knew you were going to ask that. Yeah.
The question I want to ask is, what is your sort of, I guess, craziest industry story that you have?
Oh man, I've had a lot of crazy industry stories. Okay, I got one. So again, I'm not gonna.
Yeah, of
I don't
course.
really believe in name dropping or being
Yeah.
specifically negative about certain things, but I was, my agent called me and said, "Do you want to pitch on this thing?" And my gut reaction was, I don't understand how that thing could be a movie. It's not a movie. It's just this thing.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh yeah, but like, why don't you just see what you can come up with, take the meeting, whatever. So I took it very seriously because the truth about these projects is like, there's no reason why. I mean, look, the Lego movie, people were like, this is a toy. This is fucking stupid. So there's no reason why the Lego movie couldn't be good. And that's why they ended up making something really cool. You have the Barbie movie. The Barbie movie, like, you can make something good that's based on IP. However, usually the movie's being made for the wrong reason, which is why you end up with something that's maybe not good. So this particular IP, I was like, I just don't, it's really tough. It's really tough. But I took it very seriously, came up with this whole pitch. It was maybe like 20-minute long pitch. And I'm doing the pitch. And this is the first time this has ever happened to me in my entire career. Somebody was crying. One of the producers was crying on Zoom during the pitch. And this was like, I really turned into this emotional story. There was this family dynamic. And I was like, oh my God. So I end the pitch. And I'm like, and that's the movie. And it was awkward. Like, everybody could see that this guy was crying. And there were, usually you'd get notes and they would talk about the pitch, but they were kind of just like, okay, thank you. Gotta go. And so I called my agent and I was like, dude, this has never happened to me, but like, I think I nailed this. Like, this guy was like crying, like he couldn't stop himself from crying. And that's good because it was meant to be emotional.
Right.
So he's like, let me talk to them. So my agent calls me back. Like, it was like 5 minutes later. And he's like, yeah, they said no. And I was like, wait, but that guy was like crying. He was so moved. And he's like, yeah, I guess the pitch was just really sad. And I was like, well, what was the problem? And he was like, well, the person who owns the IP didn't like the fact that you were making fun of the IP. And I was like, the first conversations I had with one of the lower level producers was like, we're bringing you in specifically because this IP is really silly. And I know you can do it and like make fun of it in a fun way and turn this into something.
Yeah.
And I think it's just like, there's been so many experiences that I've had like that. There was a specific board game that the very concept of the board game speaks to a very specific societal issue that's happening right now. And so I wanted to address that. And then you give that version of the movie and they're like, ooh, the board game company really doesn't want to go down that road. And it's like, but that's what the game, and so it's like, that's like a whole nother can of worms. And I think, this was all pre-Barbie. So I think now maybe people understand that they do need to poke fun at the IP because, I mean, that's what Barbie did and it made $1 billion. But when you get to a point where it's like, hey, can you pitch us this movie that's based on marshmallows, which I also did. You kind of get to this point. I'm not saying the names of any brands. These are just these are marshmallows that you eat. You eat them on Easter. You eat them.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, it's like you do get to a point where it's like, what am I doing here? And it feels, it really feels like a punch to the gut when you come up with something. It's like, this is way better than what this movie, like, this is a really like genuinely good movie. Cause it's like, and then when they don't want that version, it's like, I don't know what they want. I mean, a lot of those movies just don't get made. They're not real projects that anyone ever got hired for. They were approached by a candy company that said, what do you think about this idea? We can make some money. And they're like, sure, let's hear some takes from writers. But like, That is, yeah, another whole can of worms of like the
Interesting.
corporate, these corporations that want to make things based on candy brands. And I know people are really
Yeah.
oversaturated. We just got like this Pop Tarts movie on Netflix. Um, but there are ways to make really good movies. Like, I don't know if you guys have seen Blackberry, but for a movie that's
Oh yeah.
about this phone, that movie is so good
Mhm.
because it's not like, oh yay, Blackberry. It's about the failure of this thing, and it's
Yeah.
such a good movie. So there are ways to do it in interesting ways, but yeah, like when you get to a point where you're pitching this candy bar, this board game, it's like it does start to feel very dark, and like this alternate timeline where it's like, I can't believe that this is what you have to do to
Yeah.
try to get hired on something, you know?
Yeah.
That's
It's
crazy.
it's a bit surreal to, you know.
Hmm.
I mean, it sounds like a surreal story. It sounds like it is a movie, right? Where like, you know, your agent
Yeah.
says, "All right, well, today we've got some really good lineups. We want you to pitch on trees. Not
Yeah.
anything specific, just trees in general." It's
Yeah.
just like,
Yeah.
oh, um,
Yeah, there's a producer who's one of my favorite producers. We're working on something together now, but he used to work at a much bigger company that had
mhm,
to deal with the studio. And one of the first times we ever met, we talked about this. We talked about the problem of pitching on these mind-numbing, intellectual
yeah,
property based projects. And
yeah,
he told me the story of like the moment that like traumatized him, which is why he left working with this big company studio to go do his own thing. He said he was in a
mhm,
room with the studio. They had a deal with this particular studio, and they gave him a piece of paper that it was just song titles of like famous songs. And he was like, "What is this?" And they were like, "These are all the songs that our studio owns. We want to try to turn these into movies." And they were just the titles of like pop songs. And he was like, that was the moment that made him basically leave his
mm,
company. Like he had such an existential crisis because it was like, that's not what he got into the business for. And
yeah,
the same here. Like, I didn't get into the business to pitch on, I didn't pitch on that Pop Tarts movie, but that's not the type of movie that I found myself wanting to pitch on or work on. And like
mhm,
the stuff that I've been lucky enough to work on, like the Magic School Bus or like comic books, like I've worked on some really cool stuff, and
yeah,
I do feel lucky. But there have been things that I've sunk months of time into that that are just unbelievable in terms of like what they
yeah,
actually
yeah.
gave me to work with.
Right. There's like this cross section between, you know, commerce and art, and having like companies who have obviously have money, you know, like
Hmm.
candy bar companies, or, you know, board game companies, or random companies of products or whatever. It's just so strange to me that, like, I guess it's not that strange. I mean, because, you know, it's an avenue for marketing, right? You're just
Hmm.
marketing
Hmm.
your product, I guess. But
Yeah.
like, is there gonna be a point where like enough is enough in a way, or will it will just keep kind of like diverting, going down this whole rabbit hole where it's like, you know, it's kind of like in have you seen the movie Dream Scenario,
Yeah. Yeah.
where it's like in your dreams now, you know, there's an ad coming up or so or whatever, like,
Yeah, I think, I don't know, the IP thing. I mean, we've gone past the point of parody, right? Like there was that show on the after it was called The After Party on Apple, where they were always making a joke about like the Hungry Hungry Hippos movie. But like
mm,
that, the reason they made that joke is because that is IP that the studios tried to make. Um,
mm,
the problem is, like, even decades ago, right? With like, let's look at the Pirates of the Caribbean movie. That
yeah,
was something that was sort of really early days of like, could this thing that's maybe not a movie become a movie in a specific way? And the
No one
same thing with the
believed in
Lego
it.
movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But the original Pirates of the Caribbean, and a lot of those movies, they're really, really good movies.
yeah,
Like, the problem is there's no reason why those movies can't be good. And it's like when someone, a lot of these IP projects that I pitch on, all you're really telling me is a title. Sometimes there's a little pitch deck. Like I remember for Magic School Bus, there was a little deck, and like each page, like one page had like the school bus in space, and then one page had like the school bus as like a submarine going through the ocean. And I was like, oh, so do you guys want like a space movie? And they're like, maybe. Oh, do you guys want this? Maybe. Like it's up to you. Like we don't know.
Yeah.
So a lot of times they just don't know what they want until they hear it. Um, but as long as there are movies like Barbie, like the Lego movie, movies that are based on IP that do really well and that are, critically acclaimed, it'll just keep happening. I do think it's got to get to the point where it's like the audience just won't go see it.
Yeah.
It's going to come
Because
to a
that's what
consumer
really,
thing.
yeah, that's how you can vote as the audience member, right? Is with your money and like what you choose to go see. However, the people who always complain about how there aren't enough original movies, they don't necessarily go support original movies when those movies are in theaters, right? Like,
Yeah.
even The Fall Guy, which is actually his IP, even though people don't realize it.
Yeah.
That movie kind of underperformed according to some of the numbers that they wanted, and so it's tough. Like the only sure things are sometimes IP, if it's the right IP, like low budget genre films, horror movies often do perform well because the budget's so low and it's a spectacle to bring in people, dates, people will go on dates to go see those movies, and people like being scared. But yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, the superhero thing, like the superhero movies have shrunk. We were getting so many superhero movies for a while, and now we're getting way less of them because they cost $200 million, another $200 million to market. Marvel has said that they're really going to reduce the number of TV shows and movies that they're going to make. But we also have shows like Invincible and The Boys and stuff that's like, oh, we're still at the height of like amazing superhero storytelling. So it's
just in a different format, right?
Exactly.
Than it used to be before. Like, because I haven't seen Invincible, but I've heard good things about it.
Oh,
but I know
so
The Boys.
It's so good.
I know The Boys is really good, and it's sort of like it's like a flip on what you would expect superheroes to be, And so
yeah,
that
one's very much so like a deconstruction.
A big thing, like you bringing up the IPs, I just unlocked an old IP movie, Battleship. That like it's like a guilty pleasure of mine. It's the worst movie ever, but it's just fun. It's just a fun movie. But I think I mean, that was way before Barbie, but I think the key thing is you bring up the Lego movie, you bring up, Barbie, and stuff like that. Those are stories that are pushing the IP, right? Like I would never expect the story that came out of the Lego movie. Personally, I was expecting literally, something completely different. And then same with Barbie, like they touched on so many real things. And guess what? Now Barbies are selling like really well. So it's like, I think it's more of a question of like you talk about, you created this really emotional story for an IP that had a person crying and they said, oh, it was too sad for that product. And it was like, okay, but that might have been really good for that product. So it's like, are they willing to take the risk on a story that's going to connect with people or push them to, to things that they probably wouldn't expect, like the Battleship movie, but that did it terribly and failed terribly, So it's just really interesting to me you bring this up. I was like, you're blowing my mind right now. That's why I was so quiet. I was just like, I would never think that people were pitching for candy products to become movies, but I guess it's true because you have like the Flaming Hot Cheetos. It was a movie, right? Yeah, on Hulu.
I didn't even see that.
I haven't seen it either, but I know there was a big misconception that like it's not actually the real story or the true story, but like they developed it to
Yeah.
be like,
Oh, it's like a biopic
yeah, it's
about.
like the
Yeah.
employee who invented it and
I
like,
see.
you know, brought it to the company and they were like, no, it's not going to work. And then it did work, but it's like, that's all fake. That whole thing's fake. But so many people thought it was like the true story.
Hmm.
You know, it's really interesting to think about that.
Yeah. Do
Yeah.
you see
Yeah.
any trends? Sorry, go ahead.
No. Trends
I,
with
I was
with
gonna say,
IP
are
or
yeah, or like just in general, like for what people are asking
yeah.
pitches for. Are you like seeing anything?
Yeah, this thing that happens where it's like people are always kind of chasing what's the most recent success story.
Mm-hmm.
Something I've been hearing a lot lately is rom-coms.
Mm.
Rom-coms, and this is because of not the Idea of You. The Idea of You is a rom-com that just came out. What's the Sydney Sweeney one?
Oh,
Anyone But You.
yeah, anyone but you.
Anyone But You, not the Idea of
Yeah,
You. That movie was such a breakout hit, and it made so much money, and the budget wasn't $100 million.
yeah,
And I think especially in a, I know we're not post pandemic because the COVID's still happening, but like after the lockdown happened, I feel like something shifted in terms of the type of content that people like. Because like, I don't know, I'm thinking about like Ted Lasso and shows that like
mm,
got really sort of heartfelt. There was just, and like maybe you could even say like a little bit cheesy.
yeah,
Which rom-coms do have that, and there's usually a formula and all that. But there's something about it that just hits different now, especially in a time where it's like, like I was just talking about this like yesterday with an exec about Anyone But You, because he watched it with his wife and I watched it with my fiance, and um, he was like, yeah, it kind of hits all the beats, like all those crowd pleasing rom-coms.
yeah,
Like it's a retelling of that same Shakespeare, structure that's been done before. You throw some hot people in there, and it's
mm-hmm.
escapism, and we're hitting all the beats. We already know what's going to happen. Why does
Yeah,
that movie make so much money? There's something comforting about it, and I think
mm,
so. Yeah, that is like every meeting that I've had in the last few weeks. Rom coms have come up.
mm,
That's crazy because that
And
I've all
yeah,
I've
yeah,
ever heard is like those just don't make money right now. Those don't make money right now. You know, like
yep.
we
Until they
lost.
do, yeah,
mm,
That's
yeah,
insane. I mean, everything is in ebbs and flows in this industry where, you know, we had superhero movies, these are leaving, action movies go, you know, westerns are a great
yeah.
example. They were huge. Now they're not. Like, yeah, that's crazy.
Mhm. Yeah, and then another trend I would say is just movies that are smaller. Like
Mm.
I recently pitched kind of a big, a big swing action comedy, like big budget to one of my representatives, and they were saying that the conversations that are happening now, and this makes sense because the spending is down.
mm,
Um, that studios are looking for stories that are a little more contained. That's kind of always been a thing, the contained movie. But in terms of horror, horror is another genre that I love, that I also sort of work in, and people are always trying to find what's the next Five Nights at Freddy's,
mm,
because that was such a phenomenon, even though that is IP.
yeah,
People want the next Megan, which is like, I think a good example of like, they always say horror comedy is something you shouldn't do, but
yeah,
Megan kind of has like a bonkersness to it that is really
Yeah.
fun to
mm,
watch in the theater with a crowd.
yeah,
I think that, I love Ari Aster and I love like misery horror,
mm-hmm.
but I think that fun horror that also makes you scared. Um,
Yeah,
there, I think the through line is like fun stuff that's fun to watch. Like
yeah,
even I talked to some executives recently that were talking about the new Roadhouse remake, which some people were like, "This is dumb, but it's really fun." And it's like there is something to be said for stuff that is fun. Like there not everything has to be this really complex story. Sometimes it's just fun to watch stuff. Like why do we like reality television? Like I watch a lot
yeah,
of, ever since the pandemic, I've been watching a lot of reality television because I think it's just fun to watch.
mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, I think I would say those are the through lines, like rom-com, contained smaller stories, and then anything that's like fun horror is definitely a big
Yeah.
one. Um, yeah.
Did you ever see? This was a couple years ago, I think, but Barbarian.
Probably my favorite movie that came out that year. I
Yeah,
love Barbarian.
I
I
did
think
too.
like for that movie to do so well, and as it went on, nobody was spoiling it on Twitter because
Yeah,
that movie takes such turns. And
yeah,
I'll never forget being in the theater when you cut to that second act and it's Justin Long like in the car singing.
yeah,
And it was just like everybody was like, "What is this? Did something happen with the projector? Like, is this the right movie?" Um, I love that movie so much. Yeah, that
yeah.
guy, Zach Kreger. It's funny because he came from comedy and now he's like the
Yeah,
horror guy. Jordan
right.
Peele, who came from comedy, who's the horror
Hmm.
guy. And I sort of come from comedy, and I've had so many moments in my career where people have tried to tell me, "But don't you do comedy?" Like, and I'm like, comedy and horror, man, like very similar rhythms.
Yeah,
The sort of math and rhythm of a scare and a laugh, very similar. And also, like horror movies can also be funny. Like Barbarian is
yeah.
again like horror comedy is considered this bad word. Like you're never supposed to pitch something as a horror comedy, but like Abigail's a horror comedy. Barbarian is, I would say, that's a horror comedy. Like it's a really
That's kind of
hilarious movie.
because there's definitely like elements of it where you're like a bit of the ridiculousness, of like
Mhm.
what is it going on,
Yeah,
uh,
it's so
and
absurd.
then
Yeah.
the and because like the milk thing that was it should just do it, just do it. That was just,
Yeah.
but I think that it like reminds me of in a way like the Fall Guy, right? Where it's like
Hmm.
there's elements that like sort of there's it's an action movie, right? But then the comedy breaks in
Hmm.
ways that make it fun. Another movie that I love a lot that's like this is uh, Edge of Tomorrow.
Oh,
It's like an
Yeah.
action movie, but
Such a
it's
good
just
movie.
so
so
fun.
good.
Where's
It's
that
like
sequel? I
throughout.
think they were supposed to make a sequel to that.
I think so. They've been talking about that for a while, for a
It's
long
been back
time.
and
I feel
forth
like,
in
yeah,
conversations, from my understanding, for a
Yeah.
while.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I
But
Didn't
think
they
that's a movie
also
that's huh?
what? We all
Didn't they
talked
also?
at the
didn't
same.
didn't they also retitle that movie after it came
Yes.
Yeah,
out?
they did like three
Well, it
times.
It's just
was
the
not
weirdest.
after it came out. Their marketing on it was terrible, and
Yeah,
that's why it didn't do as good in the box office, because they did the live, die, repeat. And I
yeah,
remember
yeah.
when I was seeing the trailers, they pushed that really hard, and I thought that that's what the movie was. And then when it came out, it was Edge of Tomorrow, and I was like, "Wait, what?" Like it was just like so
Yeah.
confusing to
Yeah.
me. But I think that movie
But
just suffered from
didn't
terrible
they
marketing.
switch? Did they eventually switch the title to Live Die Repeat though?
I
Or
think
am
they
I just
Did
did.
they?
thinking?
Because I have
I
the
think it is
DVD and it's
is
called Edge
now
of
Live Die
Tomorrow.
Repeat.
We don't
Interesting.
even
Interesting.
know.
Okay.
Like,
Okay.
yeah.
I don't know. I do remember hearing. I realized one of my favorite directors is Doug Liman.
Mhm.
Just because I've liked a lot of his movies without realizing that he directed them.
Mhm.
But he always has like these sort of elements which is Roadhouse is one of the things that he directed recently too. But he always has like these like really fun like moments that are just like they're just like a bit of comedy within the action, and I think that same
Mhm.
thing, the comedy within the horror is also like really fun. Like what's that movie? House in the Woods, right? This is a long time ago now, but
Cabin in the Woods.
like
Yeah.
Cabin in the
Cabin
Woods.
in the Woods, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yep.
Where it's
Yep.
like it's a horror, but it's like it is just such a good movie because it's so funny,
Mhm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, even Jordan, a lot of Jordan Peele's movies do have
Yeah.
so much humor
Yeah.
infused into them. I guess especially his first two movies. But yeah. I feel like there's something about those two genres that just go really well together. I think the problem
Hmm.
with horror comedy on the studio level, why they're always so hesitant of like a straight up horror comedy, is because it's just hard to be equal parts like scary and funny.
Hmm.
A lot of the movies we're mentioning mainly are horror movies, but they do have a lot of comedic elements to them. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I guess striking the balance is is uh, something that's a little bit more difficult, you know.
Hmm. Always, yeah, yeah.
So I know that we're getting close
Hmm.
to the end of our little time here. So, but I do want to ask a couple questions. We talked a little bit about this before, but what do you feel like people are not talking about in the industry?
I mean, I guess there's the stuff we kind of touched on before, which is just the state of the industry. I think,
Hmm.
um, I don't know, that stuff is difficult because the public perception, it's difficult for the general audience to find empathy in that because they're just thinking about the film industry in terms of like the famous actors.
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
the reality is the majority of the people who work in the film
Aren't,
industry
yeah.
are the behind the scenes people who are
Hmm.
just making like barely, a living wage,
Yeah.
working on set, working behind the scenes. And so, um, those people who make so much money, Tom Cruise and like the top 1% of these actors, they're in the minority, which is why the
Hmm.
strikes were so important. But that's the hard part about what we're going through right now is like no one is saying, oh no, how will Tom Cruise survive? We're saying, how will the production designers survive? How will the people who've written on a hit, TV show and then don't work again for 3 years survive? Like,
Yeah.
the PAs, like if there's only this many productions instead of this many, what are those PAs doing? Like, um, and even that job, like being a PA is really hard, and there are people who are really good at being PAs. So, same with assistants to executives. Like, there's been so many layoffs at companies and budget cuts and whole departments that are being shut down and shuffled, and the majority of those people are not wealthy people.
Yeah.
And that is the saddest part about what is happening right now, and the sort of the lack of sympathy that I see from people. Yeah.
Yeah. That definitely is true. I mean the top 1% of the industry. Like when I was just thinking when you were saying that, I was thinking like when people think Hollywood, right? Like they
Yeah.
think of the people at the top, you know, the people who own Disney, who are
Hmm.
in the blockbuster movies. But even in the blockbuster movies, like the majority of the people are like, you know, that's the movie that they do maybe that year, and they have maybe one other thing that happened or a commercial here and there, and they're like, some of them are struggling to like still survive even though they've just worked in a major motion picture, right? Like, um yeah, so I I mean I'm also in it, so I 100% I empathize because I have experience.
Hmm.
But
It's a ripple effect. It affects
yeah.
everything. People don't think about not just the little people, but the rental houses, the
Hmm.
Yep.
locations that rely on that yearly income from,
Yeah.
filming, the truck rentals, the caterers, the people who provide the food,
Yep.
the coffee house across the street that relies on that income
Hmm.
from the studios filming all the time. Especially in Los Angeles, it ripples across the entire city.
Yeah, that was why like this some sort of government, in LA and California got involved during the strike because it was getting to the point where it was seriously affecting the economy. Even the people that I really appreciate who work at, movie theaters. Like I
Yeah,
go to Alamo
yeah.
Draft House now, and like the Alamo Draft House is apparently for sale, and they've had to shutter some of
Whoa.
their locations, and um, like AMC struggled during the pandemic. Like,
Still are.
Hmm.
yeah, still are. Like, it is. It's just one thing after another. It was like the pandemic took a big chunk out of,
Yeah.
what was happening, and then it was the strikes, and now it's just at a
Yeah.
tipping point where, it's not uncommon to hear people say, "Oh, it's just never going to be the same."
Hmm.
Maybe a year from now, it will be the same. I think that in reality, there'll just be new avenues that pop up, that are hopefully human avenues and not,
Oof.
tech companies or AI avenues. And
Yeah.
All that kind
Yeah,
of stuff.
I was actually thinking, like, I'm curious, like, what the next, or like maybe what your thought on the next, you know, few years are going to look like, if and also what does a healthy industry look like?
I mean, I guess a healthy industry, I guess it's hard to say, right? Because even as long as I've been doing this, there have been so many moments where we've heard like, oh, it is a little bit hard right now. You have to kind of go the extra mile when you take out a project that
Hmm.
has, fully packaged up with actors and stuff like that. There were even times in the past few years where people were saying, ooh, there even if you have like this actor attached, like that project didn't sell. So, but I think everyone would agree it's really really bad right now, more than ever before, and it's an existential tipping point. The next few years, I don't know. I think hopefully more indie films. That because at the end of the day, like if the streamers aren't making as much stuff as they used to, if the studios aren't making as much stuff, like people will notice that there's
Hmm.
not as much content being released, which is not good when you've had people grown accustomed to getting so much stuff all the time.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. Maybe a lot of shows will go back to specifically weekly releases, instead of just dumping new seasons every week, which I think is kind of cool. I really like, watching shows weekly and being able to
It's a
take
social
part
thing.
in. Yeah. It's like that water cooler
Mm.
Yeah.
discussion. It's like, and there are times where we have like White Lotus or something where it's like this phenomenon that everyone is talking about. And I guess on Netflix it happens more so when they do drop a whole show. Like I know everyone's talking about Baby Reindeer right now, which is,
Yeah.
probably I think like my favorite thing this entire
Yeah.
year. Really, such an amazing show. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not a finance or a math person. Like that's why I'm a screenwriter. But I think in my head, I'm like, if they were spending this much money before and now they're only spending this much money, um, somebody has to spend that money in other ways in the economy, right? And there are going to
Hmm.
be other forms of entertainment that pop up. And
Hmm.
so, what are those new forms? I don't know. Um, Tubi is like I've heard a lot of people talking about Tubi lately. It began as this free service that
Yeah.
people kind of joked that a lot of their original stuff wasn't very high quality, but we're now started seeing stuff that they're doing that is good. They've had a couple original horror films recently that people have been talking about a lot on TikTok and other platforms.
Hmm.
Um,
Like which
we're,
ones?
we're there's a new horror film that I really liked called Low Lives,
Low Lives.
on
Okay.
Tubi, and it has a lot of big twists. So don't, look it up or
Okay.
anything. But
I'll just watch it.
yeah, like Tubi. I think what we're seeing, and especially with a lot of the streamers move back to advertisements, like it almost becomes like regular TV again, where it's like
Yeah.
the advertisements are how the service survived, and they're a really important part of it. So these free services like Tubi that do make money off their advertising, that makes sense to me. And I feel like a year from now, Tubi is going to be maybe not at the level of Netflix, but I think people like free stuff, right? Like
Yeah.
even I don't even mind. Like I've had so many commercial free services for so long that like the
Hmm.
ones that I do have, like Tubi, I don't care about watching commercials here and there. Like,
Yeah.
people love when stuff is free, and Tubi has an insane library for a free service. Like there's so much stuff buried in there. Um, so I feel like a year from now, Tubi is people are going to start. It's going to be the new thing.
Hmm.
I really think we'll see some interesting stuff from these free streamers.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the model, and we should wrap up here.
Yeah,
The model is I've seen like Netflix and I think Amazon. They're all starting to do these like paid like advertisements
hmm
that you're watching throughout, and if you want to pay
yeah,
pay more, and you get no ads, but if you don't want to pay as much, then you're getting ads,
yeah,
and so it's there. A lot of these services are starting to go towards those ad tiers, for either lower cost in most cases or free, like in Tubi's case. But yeah, so I before we get going, I wanted to thank you, number one, for being on the show.
Yes.
Thanks for having me. It's been really fun.
It's been super fun. But I wanted to just make sure that people know where to find you.
Yeah, you can find me. The platform where I post most stuff right now is on TikTok. I am at Nicolas Curcio Writer. You can also follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and all that kind of stuff. And maybe at some point in the future, when you guys have me back, I will have maybe a more concrete project that I can plug. Maybe a book or something. But yeah, for now, you can find me on there, and I'll be posting about writing and just trying to encourage people to keep doing what they're doing, and also talking about the industry a little bit.
Awesome. That's great. Well, thank you so much for being on. And
yeah, thanks, Nicholas. This was awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Awesome. Yeah.
And that's a wrap for the Lot1 Podcast After Show.
Huge thanks to Nick Curcio for going deeper with us, and an extra special shout out to our Patreon supporters. Your exclusive access to our show makes all this possible.
Connect with us on Instagram and TikTok at the Lot1 Podcast. That's the LOT, the number one podcast for exclusive behind the scenes content. And hey, we're always open to more listener mail. Check out Lot1 Productions at lot1productions.com. Again, that's the LOT number one productions.com for the latest updates on all of our fun projects.
Until next time, Patreon family, stay creative, dream big, and remember, sometimes all you got to do is trust the process. See you in the next after show.